It's been described as the final chapter for Gaddafi, but whilst the end to the war in Libya seems so near, the realisation now setting in that there still remains a long, tough battle ahead. We're joined now by Yvonne Di Vito, who's just come back from Libya, where you were compiling an independent dossier on what was happening on the ground there. So thank you very much for joining us. Now, you've been saying that it's because, certainly here in Italy, the news reports about what was happening in Libya were very confusing, a lot of conflicting information. So can you tell us what you saw and what you found whilst you were there?
We went to Libya on the 28th of July and we came back on the 7th of August. And we found a totally different situation because NATO was bombarding civilians. The bombings were not only carried out on military targets, but they also hit houses, hospitals, schools, television centres. And this was totally against the humanitarian reasons they said they were there for. I believe they were doing this to bring panic in the city. That's why they were bombing the things that people use daily, like places with food and essential utilities like hospitals. This was also a difficult period for Muslims because of Ramadan. And that is why in the daytime they're in their houses. We went to Tripoli and to Zitan, and we saw huge protests with thousands of pro-Gaddafi supporters turning out against NATO, and all these demonstrations were not shown in Italy. We also visited Tangier and Samsua and found a lot of women that were screaming at us, asking why you Italians are bombing us. What did we do to you? Why are you killing our children? That was the main question. We went to Zitan the same day they bombed a house, and in this house 2 children were killed. We tried to show the pictures of these children that were dead, but apart from us, no one else did the same. Except the things that we saw with our own eyes visiting these places that were bombed. We have so much material that press officers and journalists from Libya gave to us as testimony to all the dead from the NATO bombings. After all the things that we saw, we have one question. Is this a humanitarian war? Are they really helping the civilians? Because I believe that all this is because of economic reasons, or at least there are other reasons why this war happened. Petroleum or other things. We also visited Libya before, and what we found was a normal situation where people were fine. Differently from other countries that went through a revolution, Libya is considered to be the Switzerland of the African continent and is very rich, and schools are free for the people. Hospitals are free for the people, and the conditions for women are much better than in other Arab countries.
Okay, now you've personally met Gaddafi yourself on a number of occasions. What do you think post-war and post-Gaddafi Libya is going to look like?
Even if all television stations are showing people fighting and demonstrating against Gaddafi, I personally saw many people demonstrating for Gaddafi. I don't know why so many journalists are not showing this, because they are manipulating the situation. Independent media show these videos on the internet because there is more freedom. From what we saw personally when we were in Libya, and from the documents we got, we saw the rebels as disorganized groups.
Are there fears amongst the people that the rebels coming to power will prove an ongoing continuation of the volatile situation there?
I believe that the rebels will not be able to do a good job after Gaddafi. Amongst them there are many extremist groups, Islamists, Tunisian people. I don't know why they are there. Al-Qaeda, rebels from Libya that just wanted a change. But there is too much disorganization to make a good job. The people we interviewed were very afraid to imagine that the rebels could take power, because they think that they are not able to govern the country or to take control in a proper way. The chiefs of these groups of rebels are ex-politicians, former politicians that before were with Gaddafi, and then they completely changed their face. They went with the wind, as they say in Italy.
Now, there are concerns, aren't there, that amongst the rebels now there are many ex-politicians that are simply taking off their uniforms, joining the rebels and living to fight another day?
I think they are corrupt politicians, and this was also demonstrated as the chief of the rebels was killed at the order of the leader of the rebels. We've seen many times that these rebels are making criminal acts. For example, they've taken Libyan soldiers and killed them by cutting their heads off, and they take their hearts out and show them to people. So our question is, are we making allies of these people that are committing criminal acts, and can these people really govern a country?
When we talk of the NATO mission for humanitarian reasons, do you think that justification for the war in Libya stands up to scrutiny now?
I believe it's not a valid justification, because most of the targets were civilian ones, and many people say the people were targets on purpose, to create panic on the ground.
How much of a discrepancy did you see on the ground between what NATO was saying and what you were seeing?
Many discrepancies every day. The first day that NATO bombed a civilian target, I apologized to people, saying it was a mistake. But the day after, they kept bombing civilian targets. And when the Libyan government was asking, why are you bombing civilians, NATO were denying it, saying it was Gaddafi propaganda. That wasn't true. We saw it.
This has been described by you as a war of disinformation. How much of that did you see on the ground?
We can see still how much the media are manipulating the situation. They say that Gaddafi's sons have been arrested, whilst this turns out to be untrue. They report that all of Tripoli has been taken over by the rebels, and this also proves untrue. A friend of ours, who is a businesswoman who lives in Tripoli and also created a commission to make an investigation into the facts of what happened in Libya, she told me she found some journalists who were making false reports, saying that the rebels were behind them, when in fact the city behind them was empty. We saw pictures of Green Square that is completely full of rebels. But if you compare those pictures to other pictures of Green Square, it's completely different. It seems like a set was created on purpose to make the public think that all of Tripoli was taken over by the rebels, and all the Gaddafi family was dead. We think this is a NATO tactic because they want people to think that rebels have taken power, and I believe they're doing this because NATO is in a hurry to show this before the 30th of August, because they don't want to have to provide further financing for the war.
Are there fears amongst the people that the rebels coming to power will prove an ongoing continuation of the volatile situation there?
This was not a popular demonstration, but a huge military action against Gaddafi. I think after Gaddafi it will be very difficult, and NATO won't leave the National Transitional Council to govern, as they have put a lot of money into this war. So probably they will want some of that power and to be in charge. So it's just an excuse or justification that they want to help the people. They will continue to take control of the city.
You were talking about the tribes in Libya. Do you think that Western countries understand exactly what it's going to take to unite and bring democracy to Libya?
Before, it was difficult to maintain the government in Libya because it's made of many tribes. It's a society made of tribes that have conflicts with each other. So it was difficult before, and I imagine now it'll be even more so.
What do you think is going to happen in Libya now?
Me and many other people that are watching Libya are afraid that it may become another Afghanistan, a country that's devastated by wars that last for years. It's a society completely different from us and our idea of democracy. They don't approve it. Their idea of government is based on groups and tribes that have their own chief. Then those chiefs together form a national council. They believe that this is the only way to represent all social groups. For example, they don't like our form of democracy, because if 60% of a country vote for one president, then the remaining 40 don't agree with the president. They believe this is not a form of democracy. This is the first time that a country was attacked, even though they asked for a commission to go into the country and to investigate and find facts. That didn't happen. They just attacked. This was started with false pictures sent by Al Jazeera through the media. Other media took these pictures and confirmed them as true, and the war was on. The most important thing is that the government said it was open to negotiations, but NATO didn't want that.